My name is Linda Egnatz. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Seal of Biliteracy. So, welcome to Global C.R.E.D. and welcome to this session called Game Changer, How to Earn a Global Seal of Biliteracy. So, the purpose of this session is really about the actual steps it takes to earn your own language credential, a Global Seal of Biliteracy. And so, let's get started. So we think about the game basics, what it takes to go global. First of all, what kind of players are there? You can play this game or get a global seal of biliteracy as an individual applying for yourself or as a group. You might be a part of a school or an organization or a company, and you can apply with them as well. There are no age limits. We've had students as young as middle school, and we've had senior citizens who have also earned their global seals of biliteracy. What you need to earn the global seal aren't any other credentials other than skills in two or more languages that you can demonstrate through testing. And you can test anywhere. You can test in the classroom, you can test at work, and you can even test at home, as many of our tests that are approved for the Global Seal of Biliteracy can actually be delivered online through a computer and can be proctored. And so you can do them with a classroom as a group or at work, or you can do them at home. And we have 3 tiers of play or 3 levels of certification. Our first level is called functional fluency, our second, working fluency, and our third level is called professional fluency. And so we think about the Global Seal as a way really to celebrate your language skills and your accomplishments. It took time and practice to get to where you are, but it also documents your skills for others to look to sort of approve and understand. It is a personalized certificate. It is serial numbered. No one else will have the certificate that you have. It will list your languages. It will list the date that you tested. It will also be serial numbered so that it can be entered in as a skill certification on a resume, a CV, or even LinkedIn profile. And it is unique to you. What's really interesting about a seal of biliteracy is that it is universally understood because it's based on an actual proficiency scale that is understood in academia here in the United States. A seal of biliteracy provides both an academic institution or an employer proof that you have a level of language skills in 2 or more languages. In the United States, one of those languages should be English, but it could be your first or your second language. This ACTFL scale looks like an inverted cone. If we think about that inverted cone, the bottom of the cone is the smallest amount of language. You have just a little tiny bit of language, sort of like a child or a little baby or infant, toddler, just learning to speak with just a few words. And as you grow in language proficiency, the amount of things that you can say and the amount of things that you can do with your language and your skill set grows. We also think about this in terms of what we refer to as levels. And so at each one of these levels, and there are 5 levels on this ACTFL proficiency scale, we think of that as a pathway. And as you grow and continue to grow, it takes longer to move from one level to another. And it also takes work because at some point it just gets, you can get by. You have enough language to do the job. Think about, I could write a paper or I could write a really great paper. And a great paper takes a little bit more effort. And so if we think about that, that's a little bit the way we look at language. And so I'd like to look at it in a way that might be a little bit more simple to understand because we have these 5 levels, beginning at the very bottom with novice, moving to intermediate, then to advanced, which are where the most of the language users have language skills. Past that, we go on to superior and then distinguished, like the ambassador level. And the 3 bottom levels, those most common levels, are divided into 3 sub-levels. And these are the levels that we certify with these 3 levels for the Global Seal of Biliteracy. And that bottom level is novice. And so we think about novice, and that first sub-level is low, novice, low. Think about that as a little baby. It just barely learning to crawl, needs lots of support. And if they say dada, everyone in the world gets excited. And they can't do very much, but we're all very excited about what they can do. But it needs a lot of support and a lot of excitement and help from everyone else. And then we have novice mid. As a child, this is sort of that toddler that just is so excited and they just think they're walking, but they're really using a lot of support. And they really aren't doing it on their own, but they think they are. And they're mimicking everything you say and everything you do. And that's like language users. You repeat everything you've heard. Most of your language is memorized. It's something you've repeated and you've heard, but it isn't something you create on your own. You don't have enough language to be able to do that yet. Then we get into that novice high range where you have some language skills and you're starting to kind of mix and match and get a little bit more experimental, but you don't have a lot of skill yet, and you're simply using very short language. So we're kind of at that tricycle stage, and we move now into the more independent area of intermediate, where we really are independent, but we're a little bit wobbly and we still rely on a little bit of assistance. And we then move into intermediate mid, which is what in the Global SEAL terms we call functional fluency. Because at this point in function, you can actually act on your own and be functional. You can get by. And so intermediate mid is the first place where you can independently use your language for basic skills. You are functionally fluent. Intermediate high, it's sort of like that student that has their driver's permit. They have the license to start doing adult things, but they still need some supervision and they still need a lot of practice. And then finally, at that advanced low level, it's working proficiency. They actually are out there doing the job. And so if we think about these pieces and steps, in each one, everyone is moving and they're all valid and they're all parts of the language learning process. They are the path towards proficiency. And it isn't a pass or fail, and each step is integral to the process. And so let's talk about each part of that process and what it is that you would be doing at each level. So at that novice low level, it's really about words. We call it the word level. It's all about word count. And the best way to move past this level is just to learn a lot of words. In fact, once you know about 100 words, you've moved out of that level. And so if you are a novice low and you want to become a novice mid, increase your word count. Learn words. Use them in any way you can. Practice them. Put little Post-it notes around the house, whatever it takes to learn more vocabulary. Ask people what things are called. Repeat them. Use them in a sentence. You're going to need lots of visual support. Use picture cards. Listen to music. Watch the news where you can see picture images alongside of the vocabulary that it is that you want to learn. And then you become that novice mid. And now we start to form those sort of beginning sentences, those simple practice sentences, things that you might use with your travel. If you're going to order into a restaurant and you want to ask, where is something? Those phrases you've heard as a tourist, or maybe they're work phrases, or maybe they're things that you would use with a patient, for example. What is your name? How much do you weigh? And they're things that they're simple things that you might be able to manage that might be yes or no questions. That's that sort of memorized rote language. And we really don't know what to do if somebody actually answers us. But we have some simple things, or my name is, or I'm the doctor. Hello, how are you? And so those memorized phrases, but we are expanding our language and we're starting to get a little bit more vocabulary. So what do we do to get out of the novice mid? We move into starting to describe things. That's going to be a really important piece, because when we can describe things, we can start to tell stories, which is the next level of language. So if we describe ourselves, that's a great place to start. You can do that in the workplace. Hi, I'm the doctor, or I'm your nurse. I'm going to take care of you today. If you are traveling or a business person, you might describe what you do. You introduce yourself in that way. If you're a teacher, you might talk to the new parent or the student about yourself. There's lots of different ways to use to describe yourself. And this can focus on chunks of language that you can then reorder. So if I can describe me, I'll also then be able to describe my family. I might describe someone else I work with. I might be able to describe a patient. I might be able to describe a customer or a client. I might then be able to start describing a car that I want to sell or a clothing item that I want to buy, or a food that I want to order. Because a lot of those things are, it is big, it is delicious, it is expensive. And we begin to start asking so those who, what, when, why questions. And we begin to mix and match those pieces. So that's our next step, is to really start working on questions that we can ask and answer. And the more we can add parts to those sentences, the better, because we're going to add length. And so if I can get out of that, moving out of that novice mid, I become a novice high, where now I'm forming more elaborate sentences. I'm asking and answering questions, but I'm adding more detail, more information, more explanation. Maybe I'm saying something like, I want to buy a shirt for my son, or I'm saying I'd like to order something for dinner, but I'm a diabetic. And I'm beginning to give more information. I'm also being able to put series of sentences together. So I can begin to use connecting words, and creating from those sentences, putting them together starts to lead into a longer paragraph length. I can talk about more topics. So I'm not limited to just food or to just describing myself. I can now describe places. I can describe my home. I can talk to, the carpenter who was going to, come and work on my house. Novice high is that next level. And so, what do I need to do to get there? Is I'm going to use that descriptive task that I've learned how to do to describe myself, to describe other people, places, things, and even ideas. And I'm going to begin to use them every opportunity I have to develop conversational skills, to talk to people about them, about their life, about what they do, about where they've been. And as I begin to add these pieces, I'm going to add length. I'm going to be using my question words to ask and answer questions. I'm going to be adding length and using sort of listening skills and adding that elaboration, which eventually will become a story. And when I can tell a story, I have moved out of novice high into the next level. I have moved into the realm of being an intermediate. Now, at this point, I am doing a lot of things. So I start to make a lot of errors because my language is no longer memorized and perfect and repetitive. I start to take more risks, and it's expected that I will make more mistakes. But just like the bicycle, when I fall off, I get a little bit wobbly. Pretty soon, the more I practice, the less I fall off. And pretty soon, I'm going pretty fast and pretty smoothly. And unless I hit an unexpected bump, I won't fall off. And it's the same way with language, because now I can actually create messages that are meaningful to me. I can talk about things that I want to talk about, not just something maybe the book wanted to talk about that I was practicing from. The message becomes really important to me, and getting my message across might not always be getting it across in the right way, but as long as I'm understood by someone, I'm excited that they understand me. And I get the meal I want ordered. I find the bathroom. That's the kind of thing that becomes important to me. But what I'm going to do to kind of start moving up is I want to change those sentences and those sort of sentence strings. And I really want to tell a story. I want to describe an event. I want to put things in a sequencing order. What happened first? Then what happened? What happened next? How did the story begin? How did the story end? I also want to make sure I keep using other vocabulary that I've learned from the past so I don't forget it. And I want to start doing things that grown-ups do. I want to agree and disagree. I want to provide an opinion. I want to give supporting points to my opinion. I think this because. I like something because. I disagree because. And when I can begin to explain and do those kinds of things, my level of language becomes much more sophisticated. And it will test that way on a language certification exam. And when I get to that space, it's sort of like getting my training wheels taken off, because at this point in time, a native speaker will be able to understand me. And that's like the most exciting thing, not just a teacher, because they're supposed to understand you. And so at that intermediate mid level, I now can communicate personal messages, and my grammar errors are starting to go away. I will still make them, especially when I'm doing something new and something more difficult. But I'm making fewer errors, and my message is now understandable to the people. It may not be perfect, but I can get my message across. And I'm starting to respond more eagerly and more accurately to questions, and I can tell more stories. That's the most important piece. So, what do I need to do as an intermediate mid, now functionally fluent, to get to the next level? Now it's not just telling something about now. Now I have to tell stories about what happened in the past. I have to talk about what could happen in the future. So telling stories and talking about events in the past tense and in the future tense. In other words, different time frames. That's what's going to get me to the next level. And so all that practice I did with description is going to help me, because now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to change my verbs and my actions, and some of those words, instead of saying today, I might say yesterday or last week or next week or next year. I also have to work on endurance. I have to be able to listen longer, write longer, read longer, and speak longer. And I have to do it in a more organized way, needing to use more complex sentences. Instead of saying, I like soccer, I need to say something like, I like to play soccer with my friends after school when the weather's nice, because it's so much fun. And the exercise is important to my body. And I learn how to get along with others and so on. I'm also learning to use the language now in real ways, because now I can use language for work. Because an intermediate mid and intermediate high can use language to be a receptionist, to answer phone calls, to help someone fill out paperwork at the bank or in a office, when someone's filling out maybe a loan application or a medical form. So there's lots of different ways that an intermediate mid receptionist can use their language at work. And so what's that next level? That next level is an intermediate high. They can talk about lots of different topics. They can use that past and present and future, but they're making mistakes at it because they haven't practiced very long. But they can do it with more organization, and they can do it with more length. Now, where they struggle is if something they're not expecting happens. And all of a sudden, they throw a complication like, oh, I haven't tried that before. That's where they kind of fall. It's sort of like you're riding the bike, and you hit the speed bump. Oops, I fall off the bike. But that won't last long, because pretty soon you'll get strategies to deal with those unexpected situations. And that's how we get into the next level. So that to get to that next level, what an intermediate high needs to work on to get to the advanced level is to really work with real products and real audiences. You have to use the language with native speakers. You have to watch movies, listen to music, read your favorite blog, listen, check out your favorite musician, read the sports pages, whatever it is that interests you in the language that you're studying. And you have to try things that are a little bit hard. Try to, to get an opportunity to travel or to make social connections, on Twitter or social media or Instagram. and start telling stories. Explore what's important to the cultures and the peoples that speak the language that you're interested in. Those are all things that will get you to that next level. And so when we think about language proficiency, it's going to continue to grow just like a tree. And so if we think about summarizing what we've talked about, it starts with the roots. What can you do? This is the vocabulary you have. Are you using words? Are you using, simple words? Are you using words and synonyms? How many words do you have for family? Is it just your basic family? Is it your extended family? How many words do you have for plant? Do you just have tree, or do you have tree or flower, or do you have all the different kinds of trees and flowers that are out there? Topics and themes. How many different situations can you talk about? The more you have, the more language and higher your level might be. The trunk is what we refer to as the functions, or the things you can do with language. Can you describe? Can you tell a story? Can you ask and answer questions? Can you respond? Can you agree, disagree? Can you hypothesize? Can you debate? Can you read? Can you listen? Can you write a letter? All of those things are functions, things that we do with language and we do with words. And the more of those you can do, the more functions you have, the thicker your trunk, the more proficient your language skills, the higher you are on that scale. The branches. If we think about a tree, when it first grows, those little tiny twigs are very thin. That's like those short little tiny sentences that we memorized. And then as we grow, the branches grow, and then they grow little twigs. So if we think about a sentence that has multiple parts and a paragraph that has subpoints, and it becomes those really thick branches. And we get to the essays and, really long books. So the more you can say, how organized is it? And how supported are the points? That's the branches. And then finally, we have the little stuff, leaves. That's sort of the accuracy part, your spelling, the grammar, maybe the pronunciation, how quickly and fluid you might speak. Do you pick the most authentic word, or maybe the easier word to remember? But think about a tree. I live in Chicago. A tree could lose its leaves, it's still alive. You can make mistakes and still live through the situation. And so think about your language experiences as a way, just like in sports or music, they have to practice to grow your skills. So once you get to that functional fluency level, it's all about practice and experience that's going to continue to grow. And with a Global Seal, we want to encourage that. You can get a Global Seal at each level. There's not just one opportunity. Continue to grow your language, continue to test, and continue to get credentials. So here's a way to find out where you might be. The Global Seal has created a simple and free self-assessment. It's all in English, so there's a series of can-do questions about what you think you can do, and you can rate yourself. Maybe that's not something you can do yet. Maybe you can do it a little bit or with help, or you can do it well. You tell us based on that item or that sort of description, and at the end, we'll give you a score, and you'll get an idea about where you might be on that ACTFL scale in those different areas. And at the end, you might be ready to find that you're actually ready to test, but it's all about you and your skill set. You can inform yourself if you want to learn more. There's lots of free resources that are available at the actfl.org website. And these are performance descriptors. They're proficiency guidelines that are going to tell you a little bit more about what language looks like. And there's can-do statements similar to the ones in our self-assessment. You can even watch videos of people who perform the language that you might be speaking or learning at the levels that you are, to see what does it sound like and get an idea of what can I do to improve. So if you think you have skills in 2 languages and you might be ready to test, then come back to our website, www.theglobalseal.com, and look under our Learn More to find our qualifying test page. you'll see that there's a testing chart, and it will tell you a list of tests that we have. We have tests in over 100 languages, and what score you would need on that particular test to actually score for a particular level. If you want to learn more about that particular test, you can click on the green link and it will give you a summary of that particular test. And it will also give you a link to that company's test website. The Global Seal does not give you the test. You'll take the test with a test company. If you're applying as an individual, they will send the test scores to us. If you're applying with your school, company, or organization, then they will supply the scores to us on your behalf. But you'll see those links there. So what does a proficiency test look like? Well, the first thing it's going to measure is the comprehension of language, what it is you understand. And it's two parts. Being bilingual means that you have communicative skills in a language. You can speak and you can listen. Biliteracy means you also have literacy skills. You can read and write as well. And so the comprehension of language is going to test your listening comprehension and your reading comprehension. And you might be better at one skill over the other, but what you understand. And you'll also be tested on your production of language, what it is you can create on your own in the language. You'll be given a series of prompts. Describe a past birthday party, or talk about your family, or share about a favorite memory, or describe your home. So different kinds of prompts, and based on how much you write and the vocabulary you use and the kinds of sentences that you use, or when you speak, how much you say, how accurate your assessments are, the kind of sentences that you use, the questions and answers that you might ask, all of those things are going to get put together to come up with that description of your particular language level. These are based on that actual scale we've described. In 2021, the Global Seal will also be accepting tests based on the CEFR or the Council of Europe test scales as well. After you've tested, you'll get an opportunity maybe to look at some of these test scores. And so some of the tests that we look at might be, for example, an AP exam if you're in high school. This might be what one of those test prompts look like. If you're taking an online test, for example, this is an example of the Polish reading test, the Stamp 4S test, where you see an online prompt, has a little image, and you read about something and have to answer some multiple choice questions. This is an interpersonal speaking where you hear someone ask you questions and then you have to respond. And this is a writing test where there's an open-ended prompt and then you have a blank text box where you just begin typing in the language. If the language has special characters, they are provided for you to be able to use in a keypad set. So those are what they look like, and your scores will come back to you in a score report. If you take a 4-skill test, these reports are really useful because you're going to find out where your strengths and your weaknesses lie. Most of us are not all of the same in all of our language skills. We might have, if our grandmothers spoke the language we're studying, we might speak it better. If we're shy, we might write better than we speak. Many of us read better than we listen. And so you're going to get a score, and it's similar to that ACTFL scale or ACTFL cone. It's going to tell us what our level is. It might also give us some diagnostics. It might tell us some of the things and suggestions we might do to improve. And what you're going to find is that you might actually be at one award level in one skill and at a higher award level in your best skill. To get a Global Seal, you must meet the criteria in all 4 skills. And so by the time you get all 4 skills at the criteria, you might actually be in 1 or 2 levels, 1 or 2 skills at the next level, which is sort of gamified because I'm like, almost there, I'll keep going. So what do I do once I have my test scores? Well, the process is free. First of all, you'll go to our website, theglobalseal.com, and then there is an apply button. If I'm applying as an individual, I would click individual. If my school is applying for me or my company or my organization, then they would do the application process and would click as a group applicant. They would complete the application form for me, or I would complete it for myself as an individual, and scores would need to be submitted electronically to the Global Seal. Once these are verified, the Global Seal will send to you or to your school or organization, if it's a group application, your Global Seal certificates with their personalized and customized serial numbers. And so if you're bilingual, get your C.R.E.D, document your skills, and discover where they might take you. And congratulations for being bilingual. Thank you.